All right. Colored pens up. Let's see how we're doing. Let's do some review. Number one, what did you get for the equation? We'll start with Alicia, Kamoy, and then Hezekiah. What did you get, Alicia?
C equals 50 plus 2.50h.
Okay. What did you get, Kamoy?
50 plus 2.50h equals
So it sounded the same, just symmetric property of equality. Flip it around, Hezekiah.
C equals 2.50h.
Okay. Sounds about the same. Alyssa, you had something different?
C equals 2.50h.
Okay. So this is what I was expecting.
Yes.
C equals 2.5h plus 15. If you put 2.50h, well, that's of course the same thing. So every volunteer had pretty much the same thing. What is special about the way I wrote my answer? Or not special, but what's particular about it, Catalina? It's already in slope-intercept form. Okay? So that's the kind of mindset that you have to have developed is what form are you putting the equation in when you write it so that then you can do something with it. Okay? In this case, all I asked you to do was write it, but normally you would then do something with it. All right, number two, reviewing from a long time ago. What is the solution to that? We'll start with Kayla, Aliana, Brian.
D equals -1.25.
Okay,
D equals -1.25.
so you got the same exact thing? Okay, so that's all the same thing. It is -1 1/4, which is the same thing as -1.25. However, let me caution my students who converted it to a decimal. Anyone want to make a comment about that? Go ahead, Kayla. Yeah, so the rule is that if the original equation has a decimal in it, then you can use decimals. Otherwise, keep them as fractions. So -1.25 and -1 1/4 are the same thing. They have the same value. But it tells me something about what you did. And you avoided the fraction, and that's unfortunately going to get you into trouble as we go through today and beyond. Doesn't make you a bad person, but you have to learn that you can't do that. Questions or comments on either of these? Okay, let me back up. Give me a thumbs up if you got both of them correct. Okay, put your thumbs down. So that was not a lot of people. So are there any questions on either of these? Jada and then Tristan. Number two. All right. So let's all look at number two. And now I'd like to survey again. Give me a thumbs up if you got number two correct. Good. Put your thumbs down. So now I want to do something that should be an eye-opener for you. I'm going to change the question. I'm going to change it. So now I want, without doing any writing, without anybody using their pencil or colored pen at all, I want you to find the solution to that equation. Give me a thumbs up when you've got it. Okay, put your thumbs down. Zabari, what is it? What do you think it is?
B equals 22.
Equals 22. So they agree. Yeah, B is 22. What is the value of this right here? What's the value of that? Sebastian? -24. I'm not sure why there was so much hesitance to raise your hand. That's -24. So this is saying what number plus negative 24 will give me a negative 2. It's 22. You didn't even have to write anything. So my question is, why is this so much harder? Why is it so much harder, Brandon? Because it's a fraction. Should it be much harder? No. So now let me ask you this. What's the value of that right there? Sharif?
Negative 3/4.
Negative 3/4. You should have instantly been able to figure that out. So we have negative 2 equals negative 3/4 plus b. How do I solve that? How do I solve that? Let's think of it this way. Let's not even use the solving techniques that we learned. Let's not even do this and adding to both sides. Let's just think about it. What number plus negative 3/4 would be negative 2? In other words, how much more negative do I have to add to this to get to negative 2? Eric?
Negative 1.
Yeah, negative 1 1/4. What about on a number line? Think of it this way. If this is the 0, and this is negative 1, and this is the negative 2, and I'm right here at negative 3/4, how far do I have to go to get to negative 2? I have to go negative 1/4 and then a negative 1. So this is the kind of thing that you're supposed to be able to handle mentally. So this was not hard. Everyone in the room should have gotten this question. Doesn't make you a bad person if you didn't, but you have to learn. Okay? Comments, questions on this? Concerns? Okay, put the warm-up to the side. In chapter 4, we spent our time developing the understanding that linear equations can be graphed, and we learned different ways of accomplishing that. We've moved into chapter 5, and as I explained during the introduction last time, in chapter 5, we're talking about how to take information and write the equation. Chapter 4, we had the equation, we made the graph. Now we have a graph, or we're given information, and now we want to write the equation. So we're kind of flipping things around. Last time, we learned how to write some equations from some basic scenarios. You know, the slope was given to us, we were given the y-intercept, or all we had to do was look for it. Today is a little bit more challenging. We're going to explore the idea of writing equations when we're given very limited information. What if we're given the slope in 1 point, or what if we're given just 2 points? Now, we could always graph these things. We know how to graph them. I know how to graph 2 points and draw a line through it. And then I could figure out the equation from there. But we want to be able to do this without actually having to do the graph. Now, for some of you, you are very high level. Instinctively, you should have some idea of what's going to happen or what to do. But these concepts are hard to understand, and so, like I always do, I outline things in a sequence of steps for you, so that if the instincts are not catching on, that you always have these to fall back on to give yourself a measure of success. So, writing an equation of a line if we have 2 points. It goes back to the key that we learned to set up. There's 2 pieces of information we need. We need the slope and we need the y-intercept. So step 1, find the slope. Well, you learned in the middle of chapter 4 to calculate slope if you have 2 points. So all we have to do is plug it into the slope formula and find the slope. So that's nothing new for you. So step 1 is something you already know how to do. In fact, you should be mastery level of the idea. Step 2 is where things become a little bit different than what you've done in the past. Finding the y-intercept is the hard part. If all we were given was 2 points, we found the slope in step 1. But here's the thing. We have this formula. Yes, it's the form of an equation, but it can also function as a formula. We have the slope, we plug it in here. We have an x, plug it in here. We have a y, plug it in here. Once we plug in that information, we can find b. Then, of course, once we have the slope and once we have the y-intercept, we write the equation of the line. So even though I wrote step 3 is just a logical extension of what you already know to do. Okay? So find the slope, find the y-intercept, then write the equation. Any questions about the terminology that I'm using? If you're missing any of the sequence of steps, don't worry, leave yourself a couple of lines of space and you'll fill it in afterwards. We're going to jump right in, and we're going to actually work with some of the harder types of questions, and then we're going to work our way towards some slightly easier ones. So write an equation given the 2 points. Now, first of all, don't do this, but I want to just remind you of a major connection. Is that in your mind, you should instinctively know that 2, 8, -5, 1, and it's going to be a line. You should instinctively be able to know that these 2 points will form a line. But now I want the equation of this line. I want the y equals something x plus something of this line. So how can we find this with just this information? And that's what we're going to do. That's what we're learning how to do here. So we need the same pieces of information we've always needed. We need the slope. We need the y-intercept. Once we have those pieces of information, we can then write the equation of the line here at the bottom. So we just have to do some work to get those pieces of information. Step 1 in my outline of steps, step 1 was to calculate the slope, which is the first piece of information we need. But that's nothing new for you. We are experts at doing this. So that's what we're going to do. Calculate the slope. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Do some simple mental math. Simplify. And what do we get as the slope? Got 3 people who did the mental math out of my 23 students? 5 people, 7 people. Alicia? Yeah, it comes out to 1. It's a -7 over -7. We get the slope of 1. So we now can fill in one part of our key. We already know that the equation of the line is going to be y equals 1x plus something. But we, of course, don't write 1x. We just write x. Now we need the rest. And that's where step 2 comes in. So step 2 is the part that's going to seem a little bit different to you. We have to find the y-intercept. I don't have the graph. I don't want to draw the graph. So I have to figure out how to calculate it. Now we learned last time that when this is 0, when one of these is 0, the y-coordinate is the y-intercept. That's another connection that you should be able to make. But unfortunately, neither of these are 0. So the y-intercept is not given to us. But we have this form. Y equals mx plus b. And look at the information that I have. I have m, I can put it right there. I have an x right here, I can put it right there. And I have a y right here, I can put it right there. Once I fill in all those pieces of information, the only thing left that's missing is the b, and then I can solve for b. So that's what we're going to do. We're plugging in the pieces of information. Y is 8, so I'm plugging in an 8 right there. M is 1, so I'm plugging in a 1 right there. X is 2 plus b. Kamoy, you had a comment or question, or go ahead.
How do we use X and Y?
Why do you think I used it? Hold on to your question and let's hold on. So what is the value of b? What is the value of b? You should be able to do that mentally. What's the value of b? Maria?
4.
The value of b is 4. Rate your confidence.
2.
The value of b is 2.
Oh,
Okay, now she's feeling the pressure. Stephanie? 6. I'm supposed to take her 2 answers and add them together and I get your answer? Yes, it is 6, guys. We're making this too hard. So we know that we've got slope is 1, b is 6, so now the equation of line is y equals x plus 6. Now I want to go back to Kamoy's question. She said, why did I use x1, y1? Well, to answer her question, let's not use x1, y1, let's use x2, y2. So now watch, let's use these numbers. Plug in a 1 right here, right? I'm doing the same thing except I'm using these numbers. 1 equals 1 times negative 5 plus b. What do I get? Got some light bulbs? Alyssa, what do I get?
6.
Yeah, you get 6 again. Of course you get 6. Because both of these points fall on the same line. Then of course you're going to get 6 again. So Kamoy, what's the answer to your question? Wow, that was an outstanding answer to your own question. That is exactly why I used the first point. I couldn't have said it any better than what you said. Sharik, did you hear what she said? Just be honest, did you hear what she said? No, because you're far away and she was talking a little low. So could you say it a little bit louder? Say what you said again.
Because they both get the same answer, but just the first one's a positive, which makes it easier.
Very good. That's exactly right. Okay? So I just found this one a little bit easier, and that's why I chose those numbers. But it will not make a difference. Okay? Comments, questions on the process that we're trying to understand?
Like, you know how sometimes people are like rushing? What would happen if you put the y with x in?
I'm glad you brought that up. That is the most common mistake that I see every single year, is that students and adults tend to work automatically from left to right. So from left to right, if I read it left to right, this number comes first. And if I read this left to right, this comes first. So naturally, I take this and I put it there. But that's not correct. And that will get you the wrong answer, because you cannot replace a y with an x. Okay? So I'm really glad you brought that up. So you have to find a way to fight that natural instinct to work left to right. You actually have to think about what you're doing. Okay? Alyssa, Hezekiah, and then Russ.
Isn't there another way to do the y-intercept?
Probably. What idea do you have?
No, I was thinking, because since you have the slope, I thought that you would use the slope to go back to 0 for the second one.
It's a great idea. See if you can do that.
No, it goes back to 6.
It should? Absolutely. Would you be able to do that mentally, or would you have to actually draw the picture?
No,
You did it mentally. If you can do that, that's fantastic. But that's very high level. That's higher level than I can handle. If you're able to do that, if other people in this room are able to see what you're trying to get across, that's fantastic. But personally, I can't do that. That's like magic to me. Hezekiah and then Brian? Very good question. What do you think? You think you could? Try it. See if you get the same answer. We already know what the answer is supposed to be, right? So try it and see if it works.
If you did what Carolina said, that you substitute x for y and y for z, x, you'd always get the opposite of the answers. Like, let's say the answer is 2 regularly. If you switch them up, it'd be -2 for whatever equation. I just tried it.
If we put the 2 here and the 8 here, it would be -6. If you put the -5 here and the 1 here, it would be -6. We would have to try it in more situations to see if your theory worked. So I'd like you to try it out on the next couple of questions if you have a chance. Hezekiah, did you try it?
Yeah,
What? You didn't get the same answer, right? So you already know you cannot switch them, okay? Could you, Eric, do you understand what Hezekiah asked? Okay, Hezekiah, ask your question again because it's important. Could you use x1 and y2 and then still get the same answer? And then he tested it out and you figured out you cannot, okay? So I got to move on and then you're going to ask your question after the next one, okay? So we want to try and explore this more and see what happens. But now we understand the process that I've outlined, so now things should be moved faster. We're still looking for the same pieces of information. We just got to find that information. I'm not going to write step 1 again. I know it's step 1. I don't have to write it out. But I do like to keep things somewhat organized. x1, y1, x2, y2, because I know that the first thing I'm going to find is the slope. So I see a lot of people with their heads down already doing it. That's great. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Ooh. So what does the slope come out to? If you're trying to go beyond the slope, try to pause for a second. What does the slope come out to? Jada and then Catalina. What'd you get, Jada? Okay, what'd you get? Yeah, you get -2 over 3. Very good. So we now know the slope is -2 over 3, which means our equation is partially done. -2 over 3x plus, or it might be minus, something. So we have to find this missing piece here. Does anyone have any questions so far? So step 2 is to use this form and use information that we already have. Kamoy, which point would you recommend using to try and find the b? And there's no wrong answer. You already know that because we should get the same answer either way. But which one seems easier to you? The second one? That was what my instinct was. My instinct was to use this point because it has a 1 in it. I thought that would be easier. But I don't know. We'll see. So we get 1 equals -2/3 times -4 plus b. Before we continue, I'd like you to take a look at this. Does this look familiar? Does that look familiar? And if it does, where have you seen it before? Does that look familiar, Alicia? Say that again a little bit louder.
It's like the problem we did in the dilemma.
Very good. So today's warm-up had a twofold purpose. Twofold. One, it was a review of something you already knew how to do, and it was a lead-in to something you were going to see today. Remember, we went over number 2 in the warm-up, and we talked about why it should not be difficult for you. Okay? So even though this looks a little messy, it should not be difficult for you. So, we've got 1 equals, what is the value of this right here? You should know it instantly. What's the value of that, Sharik?
You mean the fraction times that?
Yeah, this right here.
8/3.
8/3, very good. What's another way to write 8/3 that's a little more human? You know, the kind of thing I would see on a sign traveling down a highway. Brandon? 2 and 2/3. So when I'm trying to solve an equation, it usually works out better. Oop. I'm sorry, 2 and 2/3 plus b. So that's a little more human because now when I subtract 2 and 2/3 from each side, that's not nearly as hard as looking at 8/3. So what do we get for the value of b? What do we get for the value of b? Shelby? I'm sorry? You're not sure? Okay. Anise? What is it? Close. Tristan? Negative 1 and 2/3. Negative 1 and 2/3. Very good. So, our equation becomes y equals negative 2/3 x minus 1 and 2/3. Remember, the only thing that cannot be in mixed number form is the slope. And so this is the equation of the line that we were looking for. This is what we were looking for. Does anyone have any questions on how we went about this?
It's not a question.
Comment, whatever, it's okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say because I know that some people have trouble, like, because before they had trouble doing, like, in step 1, negative 4 and negative 7.
Mhm.
If you look at it, it actually, like, because you put parentheses, it looks like a plus sign.
Right, and I think Ms. Cooper might have gone over that with you. She had a saying for it. Do you remember what the saying was? Anyone remember the saying for changing this into what Catalina is talking about? Alyssa?
Change.
Well, that's that's one of them. She also has another one. Keep change is what I tend to do. Shelby? Yeah, add a line, change the sign. So if you add a line right here, it changes it to a plus sign. So that's negative 4 plus 7. Very good. Kamoy, and then I've got to move on.
Like, for some reason, always confuses me, but when you're writing the y equals the equation, like, I thought you told me like one time that you had to write y equals negative 2/3 x plus negative 1 2/3 the form is
I did not say that. I might have said that if it's plus a negative, that we don't write plus a negative, that you have to change it to minus. But the form saying plus here actually really means it could be plus or minus. We know that minus is really plus a negative number. So I apologize if I somehow confused you, but I would not have said you must write it as plus the negative number. This is actually inappropriate. This is what we want. Okay? We'll work through it. I'm not sure how it happened. All right, let's see how you do on your own. Checkpoint number 1. You got one question. You got 3 minutes. So, what's the equation? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'll start with Jada, Sebastian, Kezekiah, Kayla. Jada, what'd you get? Okay, what'd you get, Sebastian?
Y equals 3/4 is 7.5.
Okay. Who's next? I'm sorry. Kezekiah, go ahead. Okay, Kayla. Okay, so we have some disagreements. There seem to be some slight agreement on one. Kamoy, and then we'll come over to Eric. Okay, so that's yet another possibility. Are you frantically trying to finish right now? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Anissa, what'd you get? So there seems to be some agreement that that is the equation that it has to be, and that is correct. Y equals 3/4 x minus 7.5. Now, Sebastian, you said y equals 3/4 minus 7.5. I assume you meant the x as well. But make sure that you have that x written down. Okay? So let's now survey, but I'm going to survey piece by piece. Give me a thumbs up if you got the correct slope. Now, usually I like to say that the thumbs up system is for you and me to communicate, and it's not to look around, but I just asked you, give me a thumbs up if you got the slope, and everyone look around now. Everyone look around. Put your thumbs down. Yeah, everyone got the slope. So what was the hard part? Someone sum up the hard part in one word for me. Sum it up in one word. Brian? Fraction. That was the only issue. If you did not get negative 7 1/2 as the y-intercept, the only issue is that you could not deal with the fraction. Because you got the slope. So it's just a matter of plugging it in and working through fractions. But don't worry, we're going to have more practice. Okay? So let's continue and explore a few other possible scenarios. So we've done 3 questions already. This one looks different. But I'm still being asked to do the same thing. Write an equation of the line. So since that's what I'm being asked, then I still need my key. I still need this. I just have to find the information. So let's see who's working at a higher level today. What's the difference between this question and the other 3 that we've done so far? Tristan? Yeah, the slope is given to us. So let's review the steps really fast. Here were the steps that I outlined. So can someone make a statement, looking at these steps, make a statement about the steps and the question that we are about to do. So let me go back to the question. Make a statement about the steps and the question we're about to do. Alicia?
We don't have to do step number 1 because it gives you this.
That was beautifully said. We just don't have to do step 1. It's the exact same process, but we already have the slope. So we already know m is negative 3/5. So we already know it's going to be negative 3/5. Negative 3/5 x plus or minus something. So we just have to do step 2. This time, Kamoy's question from earlier doesn't even apply because we're only given 1 point to use. We don't have a choice. So we just have to use y equals mx plus b and plug in the information. Y is 51. Don't make the mistake that Catalina pointed out. Make sure you put the numbers in the right place. Slope is negative 3/5. Negative 3/5. X is negative 10. plus b. So what is the value of this right here, this part that looks so ugly but is really not that big a deal? What's the value of that right there? Brandon? What is it? Yeah, it's 6. For those of you who don't know how we got that, it was magic. So now we've got 51 equals 6 plus b. Mental math. What is b equal to? Tristan? It's 45. So our equation is y equals negative 3/5 x plus 45. And that is what we were looking for. Does anyone have any questions on how we did that? I'm going to put part B up. It's a longer scenario. Don't copy it, just read it. Don't copy it, just read it. Now, when exploring real-world scenarios, what's the item that I always ask you to look for first? Zavari? Total. But now we're starting to explore some different types of questions. So yes, I am going to ask you to continue looking for a total, but now you have to put into your store of experiences some different types of questions, starting with this. So I'm going to give you a little clue this time, but as you work through the classwork and the homework, you're going to have to start experiencing some new things and trying to figure things out yourself. We need this, all of this scenario, to turn into this. We need to somehow extract the information from the scenario so that we can have this, so that we can then do the work that we've been trained to do. So we have to find this information. So now let me set up what I want it to look like. There's an ordered pair somewhere in here. And there is a slope somewhere in here. We have to find it. Anyone find anything? Catalina and then Kamoy, what did you find?
For the coordinate, I got
6, 108. That's actually exactly right, and that's amazing that you figured that out so quickly. How'd you know that the 6 was actually the x?
Because for you to get 100 as a total, you have to put an input. I was thinking of variables. Yeah, the 6 is the input and the output is 100.
Very good. I love the way you describe that. So that's the input, that's the output. So this has to be the x, and that has to be the y. You gotta go ahead. Something else, and then Brian, and then Zavari. Anything you want to say? Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, Kamoy. I had called on you before that. I apologize. Kamoy, and then Brian, and then Zavari. Go ahead, Kamoy. 15. You said that with a question mark at the end. M equals 15. Period. You're confident? Okay. Yeah, m equals 15. What told you that it was 15? That the 15 was the slope? Okay. Well, it's the only number left.
Yeah.
Okay, but there's another reason. There has to be a real reason. Anissa? Very good. A month, which is like each month. And that's a rate. Slope is always a rate. Okay? So Brian, you were going to add something else? Go ahead. Okay, I apologize, Zabari. Okay, but very good. So that's extracting the information. Now we can find the equation that will represent the situation that we can then use for other explorations. So we still want m b, and y equals. We already have the m, so we just need to find the b. We only have 1 point to do it with, the 6,108. So we've got y equals mx plus b. We plug in the information and solve the equation. 108 equals 15 times 6 plus b. So what will b equal? What will b equal? It's mental math. That's all you need. Sebastian?
18.
18. Very good. And so if you look at the scenario, what does the 18 represent? Go ahead, Sebastian. You're on a roll. It's the cost of the uniform. That's the flat fee. So now we know the equation is y equals 15x plus 18. Very good. And that was the equation we were looking for. Comments or questions? Okay. Checkpoint number 2. Should be getting a little bit better at this. All right, so let's see how we're doing now. What do we get as the equation? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 confident people. We'll start with Sharik, Brandon, Zabari, Tristan, and then Aliana. What'd you get?
Y equals negative 1/2 x minus 7.
Okay. So we have 2 people who agree. 3 people who agree. Tristan, what do you think? Okay, so we have a slight disagreement. Okay,
I got y equals negative 1/2 x plus negative 7.
okay. So the correct equation is y equals negative 1/2 x minus 7. So again, Aliana, you put plus negative 7. And that's the same thing, but again, we don't write plus and negative. We change plus and negative to subtraction. That's something we've talked about over the course of the year. Just got to make sure you're doing that last little detail. Okay? Give me a thumbs up if you got checkpoint number 2 correct. Good, put your thumbs down. Give me a thumbs up if you got the slope correct. Of course. Okay. So the only issue is dealing with the fraction. We're going to spend a little time after the lesson talking about that as well. Comments, questions on this checkpoint? So you did everything, you did the whole process, you knew what to do, but you just forgot a negative sign. Alyssa? You just forgot a negative sign? Very good. And I'm very impressed that they actually went back, which is what they're supposed to do, and tried to find their mistake. And so they looked up here, and they looked at their paper, and they said, well, I must have done something. I feel confident in the process. Where did I go wrong? And it was just a copying error, and that's not a big deal. Okay? Thank you guys for sharing. And other comments or questions? Okay, so I'm going to put up example 3. I would like you to put your pencils down. We are not going to actually write example 3. It is here to demonstrate that the scenario can be presented in a different way, but that it's the same scenario. But when you put your pencil down, you are agreeing that you are going to keep your eyes up here to watch. Okay? So example 3. Write an equation of the function. So it's the same thing. I'm being asked to write we are being asked to write an equation. But now the information is being presented in a slightly different way. Does anyone remember what it being written in this way is called? It had a name. I didn't really emphasize it. Catalina? Well, right, yes, when we write the equation, we'll say f of x equals something, but the name of this style, what was the name of this style? Right?
Function notation.
Yeah, this is called function notation. But it's really the same thing. To make sure that we are clear, I'm going to translate it into traditional notation. This would be negative 2, 4.2. And this is 6, negative 8.6. So in essence, this is no different than this. It's the same thing. You just have to know how to read it. Okay? Oh, excuse me. So I personally would not rewrite it, and we talked about this when we studied function notation. I personally would not rewrite it because I already know that this is going to be x1, this is y1, x2, y2. If you know that already, then you don't have to rewrite it. But for some of you, rewriting it might make you feel more comfortable. And then from there, we would just follow the process that we've been studying this whole lesson. So I'm not going to do the whole process because we already know that part. Does anyone have any questions on the purpose of this example or what you're seeing?
So like you do the slope formula, then you solve it, then you go to B, solve it, again.
Mm-hmm.
When you get that, you put it in slope intercept.
Yeah.
What do you look for? Like put say right, and
Same exact thing. Same exact thing. I'm going to start by writing out a key for myself. I need this. The only difference is that in the textbook and when I give you answer keys for your homework and classwork, it will probably say f of x equals, but f of x and y is the same thing. So these are interchangeable, so I will accept them either way. Okay? Does that answer your question? If I'm not, say it, I'll keep going.
No, so I thought like you have to find the equation, you have to find something.
No, but look at it says write an equation. Look at what the instructions were here. Write an equation. Write an equation. Write an equation. It's been the same instructions the whole time. Okay, so I didn't really do anything different. All right, draw a line across your paper, your classwork. is on page 48. You're going to do numbers 16, 14, 12, 10, 9, 6, and 5. All right. So let's see how well we're starting to digest these ideas. Number 16, a little heads up, was extremely challenging. That's why we started out with it. You were asked to do two things. The rate is 1 car per hour, and 9 cars had their oil changed before you started work. Number 14, if you wrote it as y equals, that's fine. But it's f of x equals negative 5/3 x plus 6. Number 12 is y equals negative 10x plus 4. Number 10, y equals negative 2/3 x plus 1/3. Number 9, you were given a graph. It was y equals negative 1/2 x plus 5. And number 6, y equals negative 3/4 x minus 5. And number 5, y equals 1/3 x minus 17/3. If you wrote that as a mixed number, that would be 15 and 2/3. I'm sorry, 5 and 2/3. Sorry, 5 and 2/3. Yes? For number 9 you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah, if you can clearly see where the line crosses the y-axis, if it crosses a lattice point, all these grid lines are called lattice points. If it crosses a lattice point right on the y-axis, then it's easy to tell that that's a 5. If it didn't, if it crossed like here, then you would actually have to calculate it using the methods that we've studied. But if you can see it, then that's good enough, okay? Thank you for sharing, that was excellent. Other comments, questions on any of these? Anything, Brian?
How did you get the rate for number 16?
I'm glad you asked. Let's take a look at number 16. Remember that you have to read the scenarios and pull out information. We want to translate this into one of the types of questions we've seen today. So I'm going to give you a little hint. This translates into 2 points. The question is, what are the 2 points? Does anyone have any idea what the 2 points are? We'll start with Catalina and then Brandon. Give me one of them.
I'm not positive.
That's okay. It was
2,
okay. So most people put in 2, 11. And that was a great instinct and a great idea, but unfortunately there's a flaw. Does anyone know what the problem is with this ordered pair? Well, Brandon, you were next. Were you going to say the same thing? You were going to say 14, 3. Okay? So we'll get to that one in a second. Sebastian?
You started 2 hours after the shop had
That's right. So it's a reading issue. You are scheduled to start your job at an oil change shop 2 hours after the shop opens. So you step into the shop, how many hours have already passed by? 2. Now, 2 hours after you start. So how much time has passed now? 4. So the correct ordered pair, and it was not easy to figure out, is 4, 11. The 2 is, you're supposed to be confused. You're supposed to think it's 2, but it's not. Because 4 hours have passed by. 11 cars have been done. Okay? 3 hours later. 3 hours more. So now how much total time has passed by, Jada? 7 hours. 7 hours, and now Brandon, fill in the one missing number. 14. So now we have the 2 ordered pairs to work with, and from there we can find that rate. What's another word for rate? Slope. So when I say rate, I'm saying slope, and when I say slope, I'm saying rate. Okay? Comments, questions on this? I gave you a hard one on purpose. You were supposed to try. If you got it wrong, that's okay. Okay? Sebastian and then Jada.
If it was 1 car per hour, how come 9 cars can use 2 hours?
You know, and I actually spent some time thinking about it, and I know I had figured it out, and then I'm forgetting at the moment. 2 hours go by, which would imply that 2 cars have been done. That's a very good question. I had it, and I honestly, I'm totally getting confused again. I was confused, then I had figured it out, and then I'm now confused again. Let me look at it a little bit, because I had the same question for myself. But it's 9, I just don't remember exactly how to explain it. So I apologize, but I will come up with an explanation, and I will tell you. Jada was next, and then Ann, and then Brandon. Yes. Go ahead.
I thought 7 hours, but it said a total of 14 cars, so I automatically did 14
Okay, but unfortunately you can't do that because we don't know if it's a direct variation. That will only work if it's a direct variation. And in this case, we don't know if it is. Okay? It's hard, look, and that's great. That's great that you tried that. Okay? But if you think about calculating slope or rates, in any of these, in any of these other ones, did we just take this number and divide by that number to get the slope? It's more complex than that. We use the formula to calculate this number, okay? It's not a great explanation, but that's what I have for now. I am going to go over number 10, but let me wrap up. Brandon, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, is it 9
I think it is. So, but it's a little confusing the way it's worded. And so there was 9 cars that had already been done.
Maybe they stayed overnight.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is I think it's implying that there was cars done already, but it's confusing the way it's worded. There's no two ways about it. It's confusing. Okay, so there was a question about number 10. So let's survey first. Give me a thumbs up if you got number 10 correct. Okay, put your thumbs down, because that was very few people. Give me a thumbs up if you got the slope for number 10 correct. Okay, so put your thumbs down. So that was almost everybody. So we're able to get the slope, but then we're getting messed up with the y-intercept. So let's assume that you already know the slope. So we know that m is negative 2/3. So most of you said you figured that out. So now we need to pick one of these points to work with. Which one should we work with? Which one do you think would be easier? Come on. Negative 10, 7. That's fine. So we're going to plug it into y equals mx plus b. So let's plug it in. The 7 goes here. The slope is negative 2/3. X is negative 10 plus b. So now it's just a matter of simplifying. So this becomes 20/3. 7 equals 20/3. But what's another way to write 20/3? Come on. 6 2/3. So don't even solve it. Just think about it. This number plus what will give me 7? 1/3. Okay? I've got to move on, so I apologize. If you still have questions, I'll try to answer them during care. Draw a line across your paper. Your homework is page 302. You're doing numbers 4 through 48 even. And your effort and your extra attention should be given to numbers 46 and 48. You're going to read the next section. And I had originally said you're going to have 2 quizzes this week. You actually have 1 quiz on formulas this week. The formulas will be Friday. And that's all formulas, all 10 of them. And then you will have a quiz on 5.1 to 5.4. I had originally said